welcome in to another episode of Draft Dads, episode 4. Today is Tuesday, April 10th. Hopefully you're listening on the same day or tomorrow morning on your drive to work. Today we're going to talk about way too early wide receiver rankings.
Yes.
Dave Campbell here. I'm your host with Matt Cherry.
How are you guys?
Hope you guys are doing as well as we are, ready to jump into it. So we're going to switch it up a little bit differently this week. Matt's got a little something on his chest. He's at a trying week.
I'm going to use the podcast event here, guys.
So let's let it rip, Matt. What you got for us?
Well, it's a little bit of a trying time in my household. So as you guys know, I've got a 10-month-old. You may as well call her a fussy 10-month-old at this point. She's starting to get in her personality, but she's been whining and crying a whole lot. You know, my poor wife, she's got another one coming here in 5 weeks. So, look, just to be honest, you know, she's very pregnant. She's just ready for it to come out. So, it's been a little bit of a stressful week for me, but I'm glad that I can get on the podcast here to kind of put my mind in a different spot. My work life has also been pretty darn busy the last 2 weeks. So, again, I'm going to use this podcast as kind of my little time to get out and shine a little bit.
There you go. I'm sure the listeners are tired of hearing you cry already, so let's jump into it. News and notes. So Andrew Luck is throwing a football now, but I'm hearing it's not an NFL-sized football.
I just don't like this at all. Something is going wrong here. Something has been wrong for a long time, and this news tells me that this guy, this once-in-a-lifetime type QB generational talent, was mismanaged. And it is amazing to think that. A guy like Andrew Luck.
Do you think it has anything to do with a neck beard?
It could have something to do with the neck beard. A neck beard of that kind is just not welcomed on this world. But you know what? I think if anybody can pull it off, it's Andrew Luck.
Well, you know, I just kind of get deja vu from last year. So I was sipping the Andrew Luck Kool-Aid last year as a buy low guy. So I would get him in a later round and then, you know, pair him with another guy at the end of the draft. Like, Matt Stafford is going late, Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
Pairing him with a guy like that. And then you know what he did? He just sat on my roster for 8 weeks and just rotted.
Well, it's because he's one of these guys that if you can get him, I mean, he can be a tier 1 QB. He's proven and shown that.
Oh, his upside's huge.
So,
not trusting him again.
Yeah.
He's dead to me.
Again, with quarterbacks, the throwing shoulder, when you start to talk about the labrum and the ligaments, I mean, this is bad stuff. It just doesn't feel right to me. And it also, I mean, it's affecting, we're talking about wide receivers today. I mean, think about how much this affects T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton is a legitimate top 5 wide receiver with Andrew Luck fully healthy. So this is definitely going to affect him a lot too.
Absolutely. So let's talk about Odell Beckham Jr. reporting to camp or saying he's going to report to all voluntary workouts. So I think Odell Beckham is kind of trying to save face and he's trying to get that big paycheck still.
I'm just glad that we can finally put the Patriots thing to bed. I know we truly can't put it to bed, but the guy's reporting.
It's fun
Patriots,
though, man.
The Patriots are never going to pay that deal. So I'm just glad we can stop talking about OBJ to the Patriots. You know how I feel about this.
So I don't think OBJ is getting traded whatsoever, at least prior to the season. But
there's still that little bit of a chance, and with the NFL draft coming, you still don't know. But I agree, Dave.
It would be big.
I would say a 95% chance in my mind that he's staying put in New York.
Next thing up, speaking of the Patriots getting a receiver, Jordan Matthews joining the wide receiver core in New England.
Yeah, Jordan Matthews is a talented guy. He's a high-round pick. It's the Patriots, and it's the passing offense. You never know who might emerge there. You know, behind Gronk and Julian Edelman, it's a little bit of a, you've got the Malcolm Mitchell, and, you got Chris Hogan there, but, he may be able to have some value. I'm not sure, but.
I almost did a Hulk Hogan impression. But it would have been so awful that I would have regretted it immediately, and it probably would have been cut out of the podcast.
Don't do it.
So another visit to the Patriots, Orleans Darkwa. Like, what are the Patriots doing? I feel like they just entertain everybody and anybody.
They've got to have 4 running backs every year. They have to.
It's absurd. It's absurd. I mean, Jeremy Hill, Gillislee, and then you've got who are the other two
Rex
that they've got on
Burkhead.
Rex Burkhead's on the roster. It's crazy to me.
Every year, there's going to be 4 names, and usually 3 of the 4 names, we know them in some capacity from success from another place. So keep your eye on that backfield as always.
Here's kind of a big one to me. Being a Saints fan, we didn't really make any big moves as far as the offense goes. Signed Ed Dixon, or Ben Watson, I'm sorry, not Ed Dixon, the tight end role. But Cam Meredith signed the offer sheet to the Saints from the Bears. Now, the Bears do have a chance to match that offer sheet, and I believe it's a 5th-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the Bears would kind of be crazy to just let him slip and go to the Saints like that, even though they did bring in Allen Robinson and, they're Taylor Gabriel, so they're bringing in these speedy receivers that I think Matt Nagy kind of liked in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if maybe Cam Meredith didn't really fit that mold that he was kind of trying to build, but I think with the Saints, his value goes up.
I just think he's a player to keep an eye on. He's proven that he can have relevance in fantasy football. So just keep an eye on him. I think either place he's going to be relevant. I think obviously more relevant in New Orleans, but just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of last bit here, we'll clean it up. Richie Incognito retiring from Buffalo. Man, it's one more negative thing for LaShawn McCoy to me. Richie Incognito, he's just kind of been that, guy who's kind of hold together that offensive line in Buffalo. And LaShawn McCoy is going to be 30 by the beginning of the year. They don't have a quarterback yet. I'm just not convinced that A.J. McCarron is going to start the season for them.
The only thing I can say about Richie Incognito is he's a guy that if I met him in public, I know that I would hate him. That's all I know.
I think he has more chins than anyone I've ever met.
I just know I wouldn't like him. He's not my kind of guy.
He would probably start a bar fight. That's kind of the guy I see him as.
Who would you take in a fight, Taylor Lewan or Richie Incognito?
Oh. Give me Taylor.
Me too.
Give me Taylor. Okay, so, that's going to wrap up news and notes. So we're going to jump into wide receiver rankings. Way too early wide receiver rankings. Keep in mind, this is going to be half-point PPR scoring. We do not have any rookies in these rankings. And we're going to switch it up a little bit different than how we did the running backs last week. We started out last week. I gave you my top 20. Then Matt gave you his top 20. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go 1 for 1. I will give you my number 1 wide receiver, and then Matt will immediately give you his number 1 wide receiver. And then we'll kind of discuss from there.
I do want to say you did mention we're not going to include rookies here. As you look at the wide receiver, again, it's where we have a wide receiver day here. When you look at the wide receivers in this year's draft, I wonder if this is the weakest wide receiver draft that I can remember. I mean, think about it. Other than Calvin Ridley, when you go look at the top 10 guys coming out, these are names that I have barely heard of. And I feel like
DJ
every year we've
Moore,
got...
from Maryland.
Yeah, we've got a couple rookies, though, every year that seem to have some sort of fantasy relevance. But it's going to be hard to pick this year because just a lot of these names I don't know, and there's not a lot of big school guys, too. So just something to keep your eye on, too, for late-round guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you guys out there doing your dynasty rookie drafts or kind of keeping your eye on some of these guys, but for now we're gonna leave those guys out because it's not fair to rank them without a team, quite honestly. So let's jump into it, Matt. I will give you my number 1 overall receiver this year, and it's gonna be Nuck. DeAndre Hopkins. So, Nuck, if you buck, I think he's going to have a killer year this year with Deshaun Watson. Pick up right where he left off last year.
I've got a crazy DeAndre Hopkins stat for you. He came into the league in 2013. He was a first-round pick. Since that time, he has caught a pass from 11 different quarterbacks.
Since 2013?
Since 2013.
Wow.
4 of which were last year, which sounds crazy because we were so on the Deshaun Watson train. But think about after he got hurt, how many different guys. Deshaun Watson didn't start the year. So 4 quarterbacks last year, but 11 in his time with the Texans in the NFL.
That's incredible to me.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And he's been a beast, man. He's been a beast. So.
Yeah, I can't sit here and hate on you for having him in the number 1 spot based off of his targets last year and
the number 1 receiver last year in fantasy as well.
But with multiple quarterbacks and including I know Deshaun Watson's talented, but he's still a rookie. So the fact that he was able to connect with him that early, you got to give him some credit. So I can't, I think it's hard to uncrown Antonio Brown because of how consistently he finishes as a top 5 wide receiver.
So is that fantasy. Your number 1?
Antonio Brown's the number 1. He is the unanimous number 1. But I can see why you would want to put DeAndre Hopkins as your number 1. On my board, he is number 2. So our 1 and 2 interchangeable this year.
So Antonio Brown is my number 2. Gotta love Antonio Brown. He's arguably the best route running receiver in the NFL. Amazing hands. It's going to be status quo for Antonio Brown.
It's hard to predict when you may see a regression from Antonio Brown because he's so good in every facet of being a wide receiver. Like you said, great route runner, great hands, and his ball skills are amazing. When he's a small guy, and his ability to go up and get balls over guys that are larger than him is pretty incredible to watch.
You know what's crazy? Antonio Brown, another guy who's going to be 30 by the beginning of the season.
Wow.
So
I guess it took him a little while to really take off coming out of a small school.
Right. He didn't light the world on fire. He kind of had to earn everything that he got. So, yeah, Central Michigan University, so small school. So it's going to bring us to my number 3 ranked receiver. So Matt had DeAndre Hopkins at 2. Number 3 for me, OBJ. So I know he's coming off the injury. I know they're really not sure who the quarterback is going to be. If it's going to be Eli or if they're going to draft a guy like Rosen or Baker Mayfield. I know they've talked about the Giants are in love with Sam Darnold with Sam Darnold. But, whoever it's going to be, OBJ, he's number 3.
Yeah, I have him at number 3 as well. I do think this is the end of Tier 1 for wide receivers. I think these guys are probably your best bet to finish as a top 5 wide receiver. And, you got to think about last year. He got hurt in the 3rd game of the preseason. He tweaked that leg. I remember it was against the Browns. I was actually watching that preseason game. And, so he was coming into the season with an injury. He did sit out the first 2 games, comes back in game 3. What does he do? 89 yards, 2 touchdowns. Obviously, he goes back down after that, but, I think at this point he's proven that he can come back from injury. So, in my mind, I don't worry about OBJ because I know when he's on the field, he will produce, and he will also produce touchdowns, which is important. So, I think he's our consensus number 3. And I think he's the last guy, and I think that first tier of wide receivers this year.
He is my favorite receiver to watch on the field, hands down. So that's going to take us to my number 4 receiver is going to be Michael Thomas with the New Orleans Saints. I'm just happy to have a Saints guy in the top 5 here as a receiver. It's a good time to be a Saints fan. But Michael Thomas, 6'3", big receiver. You saw him get peppered with targets last year with Drew Brees.
How do you feel about the touchdown regression from his rookie year to last year, going from 9 to 5?
I think he was getting a little bit of double team out there, to be honest with you. Michael Thomas is that big receiver. I think that 9 is probably going to be the norm for him throughout his career. So I think he's going to go up. This is his 3rd year. Maybe it's the sophomore slump that you see with some of these receivers, but I think Michael Thomas is going to be a big asset as long as he's in New Orleans. He's going to be a big body. He's going to be a guy who gets close to 100 receptions every single year. He still had over 1,100 yards last year. So,
So the one thing that I think to key in on with Michael Thomas, I'm a big Michael Thomas fan, obviously. I have him ranked at number 5, so only one spot away from you. He's being drafted currently as the number 4 wide receiver, so we're spot on here with what we think. I think that the touchdown thing will come back a little bit. It was actually crazy to see last year. If you look at the offensive touchdowns and how they were dispersed, it is crazy to think how many rushing touchdowns New Orleans had last year and how little passing touchdowns Drew Brees had last year. Drew Brees is too good to throw for that little amount of touchdowns again. So I think you see Michael Thomas creeping back toward that 9 touchdown performance his rookie year. He's got some nice supplemental pieces too. I think Ted Ginn is a nice supplement to him. You've obviously got Kamara coming out of the backfield, and we'll see if this Cameron Meredith thing comes as well. But I think that Michael Thomas is going to have a great year. The targets are there, the catches are there, the yards are there. He's very consistent. To get him up here to this top 5 type wide receiver, though, he is going to need to approach double-digit touchdowns for sure.
I think you can do it. So let's jump into my number 5 guy, your actually he's your number 4. So tell me why you think A.J. Green is better than Michael Thomas.
Yeah, A.J. Green to me, it's because of the upside. I do feel like A.J. Green has a larger upside. So Michael Thomas to me.
You think skill set?
Yeah, I don't know if skill set is the right word. I look at it as big plays. Michael Thomas isn't a big play wide receiver. He is your, I'm going to cut you a little bit at a time type of a guy. Whereas A.J. Green can bust you for long ones and beat you with the mediocre catching.
So he's going to be our second receiver in the top 5 who's 30 years old at the beginning of the season.
And I'm okay with that. Now, I can't believe that he's approaching 30. It doesn't feel like he's been around that long. But, another thing with the Bengals, and you had talked about it on one of the previous podcasts, it seemed like they had a hard time moving the ball, lots of stuffs last year, lots of 3-and-outs. I can only see the Bengals offense simply getting better this year. I don't think – A.J. Green finished as the wide receiver 11 last year, and people were acting like he had a terrible year. I only see it going up. And again, I like A.J. Green's upside. I like the big play upside. And if he plays 16 games, I think he's got a shot of finishing as a top 3 wide receiver this year.
Very well could. So it's going to take us to number 5 for me. Is
number
A.J.
6?
Green. And number 6, Mike Evans is going to be squeezing in there for me. And this is just, it's more so on, I think Mike Evans had a down year last year. I think he's going to be able to bounce back. I get that Deshaun Jackson's there. I get that O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate. I get that Jameis Winston has more weapons than he's had in past. I just think Mike Evans is one of those elite talent receivers, and I have to buy into elite talent. He's a guy you have to double team constantly. I think he's a threat for double-digit touchdowns every single year.
And because of his frame and his red zone ability, he's always going to be a threat for double-digit touchdowns. The only thing that scares me about Mike Evans this year is he did not have one of these huge games. Again, he still finished in a down season. He still finished with over 1,000 yards. He's never had less than 1,000 yards in a season. But he didn't hit you with one of those big, 22-point, 24-point fantasy games where he gets 100-plus yards and a couple of touchdowns.
He was 5 touchdowns last year.
Yeah, and he wasn't there last year. So that's the only thing that scares me about putting him up this high. I do have him ranked a little bit lower than you, Dave. I have him ranked down at number 9 this year, so 3 spots below. He's currently being drafted as the number 7 wide receiver, so we're not too far off with what we're feeling with our rankings. And I even think Mike Evans will bounce back this year. I do think he'll have a better year. But just because of the the lack of a big game in there, that's why I don't want to put him up higher within my rankings.
Okay. Okay. I just think it'll be a little positive regression this year, as they say in fantasy football.
So I'll go into my number 6 here.
Let's hear it.
Because when I slotted him in here, I felt like, man, this feels a little bit like a reach, but I can't help it. So it's Davante Adams.
Oh.
To me, it's Aaron Rodgers, obviously.
Sure.
You know, that's a big reason. But
Jordy Nelson gone.
You have him slotted in at 8. Jordy Nelson is gone, and I'm just confident with Aaron Rodgers top guy. I'm just very confident in that, and I know that he doesn't have a great track record of multiple 1,000-yard seasons like Mike Evans and some of these other guys that we're going to talk about. But Dave, I've always told you I love drafting upside guys. I mean, Davante Adams is another guy that I'm not going to be surprised if he finishes as a top 3 or 4 fantasy wide receiver this year. If you look at the volume he's going to get and the amount of looks he's going to get in the red zone in that offense with Aaron Rodgers, you can't be surprised if this guy's a top 3 wide receiver this year. So I am buying into his upside, I'm buying into his volume, and I'm buying into Aaron Rodgers. What do you think?
I totally agree. I think Davante Adams, just based on volume alone, from Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers throws a sweet ball. Davante Adams is a freak of a receiver. I think that they can make some electricity on the field. I think he'll definitely be a lock top 10 guy. I don't know if I'm ready to put him in that top 5 upside yet. He has had some injury history. So, I don't know if that's something that kind of sticks in the back of my mind too. Is, AJ Green's also had that injury history too. I guess I'm just maybe not buying into the name Davante Adams.
It's tough to do. He's not the flashiest guy.
Right.
That's why.
Right. So, I'm going to root for him, but, maybe he drops down a little bit on my rankings. Just because I haven't really seen him with Aaron Rodgers as his number 1 yet.
You also have to give him a little bit of credit for being relevant in fantasy with Brett Hundley. I mean, everybody else in that offense was atrocious. He was the only guy that you could throw out there and start with. Not to throw too much dirt on Brett Hundley, but we all know that guy does not deserve to be starting in the NFL. He's just not good enough. So
There's a reason they traded for DeShone Kizer.
Yeah. So who do you got at number 7, Dave?
So number 7 for me is going to be Julio Jones. Julio Jones, I think, is still an elite talent. I just don't know if Julio Jones and Matt Ryan are on the same page sometimes. I think Julio Jones could easily be, as far as a skill set receiver, I think that he could be up there with the DeAndre Hopkins, Antonio Brown, OBJ. I think he gets hindered a little bit by Matt Ryan. He's a fast guy. He doesn't get used in the red zone, so it's almost like unless he catches these deep balls or gets a crossing route or a fade route, Julio Jones isn't really that all-purpose receiver, but he's still going to have those massive games.
And it was a little bit of a misconception this year. So they always had, in my eyes, a bad time just figuring out how to get him the ball in the red zone and inside the 10 because he's always getting doubled. And last year they almost flipped the script on that and they tried to force it to him, and he was actually at the top of the league in red zone targets last year, but his percentage of catches was atrocious. So it didn't translate to touchdowns. I mean, he had 3 touchdowns, which is awful. And I will tell you this, the one thing you'll get out of Julio is you'll get a couple big games here and there. He's proven that every season of his career, that he's going to give you some big ones, which I said earlier, you got to place some value on that. I mean, hell, if he plays Tampa Bay in his career, he averages 124 receiving yards a game against Tampa Bay. I mean, last year he put up a 224 and 2 game, which single-handedly would have won you that fantasy week last year. But Julio, and I've talked a little bit about Julio in the podcast. I think we both have him in our 7th spot. and we both have him low. He's currently being drafted as the number 5 wide receiver. For me, it's just what I've seen from watching the games. Julio Jones can be the number 1 overall wide receiver this year, and no one would be surprised. But just from watching the games, there's just something about him that is a little bit scary to me. And it's hard to put my fingers on why. I've talked a little bit about it, but I'm not comfortable this year drafting him in that top tier. So that's why he falls out of my top 5, drops to number 7. But again, don't be surprised if he does finish up there. I just don't forecast it happening.
So number 8 for me, Devontae Adams. Matt, who do you got at 8?
Keenan Allen.
Keenan Allen.
You know, this is a guy who burned me 2 years ago. We were doing a full-point PPR league, and I snagged him in the second round, and I loved the pick. I bragged about the pick. The first week comes out, Phillip Rivers is peppering him with targets, and of course, he's Keenan Allen. He's catching every one. So here we are in the first half. Keenan Allen has 6 catches for 63 yards. At the time, the game was not on TV, so I'm watching my stat tracker. Come to find out, he goes down with an ACL, done for the season. So there goes my second-round pick. But I'm still thinking to myself, like, man, in a full-point PPR, the guy played one half, and he still got me almost 13 points. But that's Keenan Allen. Even last year, I mean, through the first 10 weeks of the season, Keenan Allen wasn't even a wide receiver 2. But the way that he finished the season, the coaching staff out in San Diego know that offense goes as you pepper Keenan Allen with balls. And he's another guy like Michael Thomas, like we talked about when we compared Michael Thomas to A.J. Green. Keenan Allen is not this really big, athletic, downfield talent like A.J. Green and like Julio Jones. He's more of that intermediate guy. But there's so many targets to get in that offense, and Phillip Rivers loves to key in on him when the game plan is right. So Keenan Allen currently being drafted as the number 8 wide receiver this year. I have him slotted in at 8. What's your feelings on Keenan Allen?
I mean, a guy who almost averages 10 targets a game. I love him. Keenan Allen, like you said, he's one of those guys. He's just a great route running receiver. Never really been the big touchdown guy. You know, he only had 6 last year. He only had 1 multi-touchdown game last year. So, you know, you're going to depend on him a lot more in PPR. He's going to have those games where he gets you 50, 60 yards a game. But, you know, maybe it's 8 catches. You know, he's just a awesome possession guy. He's constantly open. And Phillip Rivers trusts throwing the ball to him. So I think he's a lock top 10 guy. I have him in at 9. So I think Keenan Allen's he's a great player who he's only 25 still.
Yeah, he's already had an ACL, but man,
ACL,
that guy,
the ruptured kidney.
Yeah, that guy's still got room to grow. Just in PPR formats, this guy is a must in the top 10. He will catch the ball for you, and he will perform as a wide receiver 1 in PPR formats for sure.
So I have Keenan Allen at 9. Matt, who is your number 9?
We already talked about him a little bit, Mike Evans. So we can move on to number 10. I have Adam Thielen slotted.
Adam Thielen.
Slightly higher than Dave here. Dave has him down at number 14. So just outside of, in 12-team formats, just outside wide receiver 1 territory. So Adam Thielen for me, and again, this is the eye test, and you know, going back to our very first podcast when I told you guys how important I think watching the games are. To me, when I watch games, Adam Thielen is special. He's always open. He's got phenomenal hands. He's fast. He's big. He's the prototypical great, big, fast NFL wide receiver. And he doesn't get enough credit for it because he came out of nowhere. And he's a little bit older. So it took him a little while to get to where he is.
27 years old. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the stereotype of being a white wide receiver. But, you know, this guy performs. And I'll even go back to, you know, last year was his big breakout season. If you go back to 2 years ago, I mean, this guy was catching 7, 8, 9 balls for the Vikings 2 years ago. And it happened late in the season, so not a lot of people were talking about it. But I think it's a quarterback upgrade this year, going from Case Keenum to Kirk Cousins. So I don't see Adam Thielen regressing in any way from a
Yeah.
statistical side of things, and I think that I am going to heavily target him as a wide receiver one this year if I'm in position in drafts. I am comfortable slotting him in as a number
You're
one wide receiver.
you're comfortable with him as your number one wide receiver.
I am comfortable with him as my number one wide
See,
receiver this
I
year.
got to put him at 2, and I have him ranked as a wide receiver 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not comfortable with him as my lead guy. He's born in Minnesota, went to a small school, Minnesota State University.
I don't know anyone else from Minnesota
Um,
State University.
No, I think the rest of them played hockey. He was probably the only one playing football. Uh, so I think he's home. So, for him to shine in Minnesota, it's got to be a dream come true for him. It just kind of makes me nervous. I don't know if he's going to get, the rapport with Kirk Cousins. It could be Stephon Diggs, and that's the only thing that kind of holds me back. Stephon Diggs is still an elite talent receiver.
And that's the smaller guy who they target in the red zone more, which is what's crazy.
Adam Thielen only had 4 touchdowns last year. So
How many did Stefan Diggs had? Quite a bit more. And again, if you're looking when they're in the red zone, all those end zone fades, they are going to Stefan Diggs.
Yeah.
They weren't going to Adam Thielen. But again, that's another thing where I feel like you've got so many passing touchdowns to go around. If you look at, Adam Thielen's volume, which again, he was number 9 in targets last year. You just feel like just naturally, can he go from 4 to 7 or 8? I think he can.
Absolutely. I mean, Stephon Diggs had, so the stat is he had 8 touchdowns, so 4 more, but he had 30 fewer receptions. So
Yep.
Let's jump into my number 10 guy. It's going to be Allen Robinson.
Now, I will say, Dave, before you go into Allen Robinson, this is our biggest ranking shakeup in all of our rankings. So the biggest gap. You've got Allen Robinson at 10. I've got him at 18. Why don't you tell us why he's a wide receiver 1 for you this year?
So I think Allen Robinson, since he's had the 1,400-yard season, he's been drafted as a wide receiver 1. He was drafted as a wide receiver 1 last year before the injury. I think he's still an elite talent. He's only 24 years old. I think he's the guy. I think he can kind of be that Tyreek Hill type of player. He's a speedy guy. I think he can be a number 1 receiver. I think he's an upgrade over Tyreek Hill as far as a receiver goes that you look for in a number 1 guy. Just build. I mean, he's 6'3", big guy. So I think that he's just going to be an upgrade for Nagy and kind of the offense they have. And what he did in Kansas City, he makes plays specific for playmakers. And I think Allen Robinson's a playmaker. I think Allen Robinson, he's going to get maybe not double-digit targets in a game, but I still don't think the Chicago Bears are a great team as far as defense goes. So I think they're going to be playing from behind a lot still. So they are going to have to rely on some of those weapons. I think Mitchell Trubisky's going to have to throw the ball.
It comes down to one thing. Can Mitchell Trubisky get him the ball? That's what it comes down to. Because traditionally, that Bears offense is not peppering wide receivers with targets since the days of Brennan Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey with Jay Cutler.
I think they've had some bad quarterbacks.
They have, and Mitchell Trubisky, to me, so when you're slotting a guy in the top 10, I think you need something more from quarterback to justify that. Also, I tend to stay away from wide receivers on new teams too. The percentage of that guy succeeding is pretty low when you change teams. There's a lot to get used to, and especially a guy like Mitchell Trubisky, who he's been in the league for 1 year, pretty much only played in college for 1 year. So I wonder how quickly they're going to be able to get a rapport too. Like I said, I have him down at 18. He's currently being drafted as the number 17 wide receiver. So Allen Robinson is a guy that we're going to keep our eye on this year, and we're going to see if Dave's intuition is correct, and I'm going to hold him to it.
I don't think I'm going to have to buy Allen Robinson in the top 10. That's just where I have him ranked. So I think I'm going to be able to. I've been doing a couple mocks as we've been talking about, and I've been seeing him in the fourth round. If Allen Robinson's there in the fourth round, I mean, and he turns into what I think he can, you guys are in trouble. So, Matt, who's your number 10 guy?
Number 10 guy, Adam
Oh,
Thielen.
yeah, Adam Thielen in there.
Moving on to number 11. I'm slotting in T.Y. Hilton here.
Ty. So you're talking about a man crush.
Dave knows I've got a man crush on T.Y. Hilton. And I love it when these little guys can go out and operate like big guy receivers because I'm sure their entire time through college or even when they're growing up, they're always kind of known as the little guy. So I like it when the little guy can come out and beat the big guy. For me, again, in 12-team leagues, we're slotting him in here. At least I'm slotting him in here as a wide receiver one. So much of this comes down to the health of the shoulder of Andrew Luck.
Yep.
If Andrew Luck is healthy, T.Y. Hilton is a guaranteed wide receiver one. I think I have put him more toward the back of wide receiver one territory because Andrew Luck's shoulder status is a little bit up in the air right now. Well, we spoke to that earlier. And even with, Jacoby Brissett last year, again, another guy that doesn't have any business being a starting quarterback, but he was serviceable at least. And T.Y. still was able to put up some good fantasy games
almost
last year.
Almost 1,000 yards. They just didn't really ask Brissett to throw the ball very much, so he only had 57 receptions. I mean, inaccurate quarterback. He's a mobile guy. Poor man's Tyrod Taylor, I guess you could say.
And you have him slotted in at 15, so just outside your wide receiver one territory.
And I think it's the Andrew Luck shoulder. I don't trust it. I don't buy it right now.
It's scary. They may as well just draft a quarterback. Who knows?
They very well could. So let's go to my guy in at number 11 is Tyreek Hill. So I'm talking about these guys just off talent. I think Tyreek Hill is one of those. He's a generational talent in the NFL. Maybe he's kind of like a mold like T.Y. Hilton, except faster. He's about an inch taller, so he's like a younger version of T.Y. Hilton to me. The only thing that kind of makes me nervous is the Patrick Mahomes. I don't know what kind of a cannon he has. He does require a big arm. Matt, any thoughts on Tyreek Hill?
Tyreek Hill is electric. I mean, he's proven time and time again that it's big play after big play after big play. I'm a little bit worried about new quarterback. Alex Smith had a tremendous year last year. And do I think that Pat Mahomes this year can have the year that Alex Smith did last year? I say probably not. I mean, that was a pretty incredible year that Alex Smith put up. I have him ranked at 14, so slightly lower. Tyreek Hill obviously has wide receiver one upside. I mean, he can break out for 30 points in a game at any given moment. I'm just a little bit skeptical with the new quarterback in Kansas City, with Sammy Watkins coming on board. I'm interested to see. They still have to feed Travis Kelce. I'm interested to see, how many targets they're going to allow. In my eyes, I know he's not really a rookie, but Pat Mahomes is still basically a rookie to me. How much are they going to let him throw? You've got three big guys to get targets. How are they going to get dispersed? So we got to keep an eye on it.
Okay, let's jump into wide receiver 12. So for me, Brandon Cooks, and this is with him with the Rams. So I did adjust that accordingly. I just think Brandon Cooks, I don't know if he's a number one receiver, but I think he has the skill set to burn defenses. So I think Brandon Cooks is going to be the guy. As long as he gets targets, he's going to make some big plays. I wouldn't rely on him as a number one, but I do have him slotted in the wide receiver one ranking spot. So he's going to be that boom or bust guy. So I say if you get Brandon Cooks, pair him with a guy with a higher floor. Matt, who's your number 12 guy?
So at number 12, I'm slotting in Amari Cooper.
Amari Cooper.
Big upside guy for me. A lot of people got burnt by Amari Cooper last year. A lot of people drafting him high. I think that he'll be drafted high once again this year. ADP is 16 this year. I just think that quarterback situation has to improve. John Gruden has said that they're going to make Amari Cooper the center of that offense. We all know he has wide receiver one talent. We've seen again, I've talked a lot about these big breakout games that can win you weeks in fantasy, and Amari Cooper has that potential. Dave, you've got him ranked down at 17, so 5 spots lower. Why the lower ranking on Amari Cooper?
It's just kind of off of last year. Watching Derek Carr, I don't know if Derek Carr is an elite quarterback. And I just don't trust that Derek Carr can get it done and get the ball to Amari Cooper. Maybe if Amari Cooper was in another situation, we've seen his talent. He does have the drops sometimes, but, maybe that's Derek Carr too. But we'll see this year. He doesn't have Michael Crabtree. It was that 1A, 1B. He's now got Jordy Nelson. So I think Jordy Nelson can be a great complement guy to him. But, we'll see if John Gruden can make him that big play guy that he once was. But, Matt, I did see that you have Brandon Cooks a lot lower on your rankings as well. So you have him down in 19.
Wait a minute. So I was gonna ask you. So when the trade happened from the Patriots to the Rams with Brandon Cooks, I don't mean to get off topic here.
Yeah.
But did you move him up, or did you move him down?
I moved him up. I did move him up.
So this is interesting because I moved Brandon Cooks down about 3 spots, and you moved him up.
And this is probably just a little bit of a gamble on my part. I don't think Brandon Cooks and Tom Brady were ever really on the same page. I think this is going to be like new life for Brandon Cooks out there with Jared Goff. I think it's a good offense. Maybe it being a good offense caps his ceiling a little bit, but I think it's going to be new life for Brandon Cooks out there with Jared Goff. I think he can almost take that number 1 receiver role from Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods. I just don't see competition out there as far as elite talent goes. All right, well, let's jump into my number 13 guy, Doug Baldwin. Doug Baldwin he's a touchdown machine. So much relies on Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson just gets out of the pocket, and I think there's like a homing missile for Doug Baldwin wherever he is on the field. He just happens to find him. So many times you see these broken plays with Doug Baldwin.
I like Doug Baldwin. Like Dave said, he always has a way of finding his way into the end zone. He will burn you with a little, a couple, 3 for 30 games. He'll mix those in there. But the guy is continuing to put up wide receiver 1 stats year over year. I did hear something interesting on the radio today, Dave. I heard a couple guys talking about the Seahawks potentially, or at least in their minds, trading Russell Wilson.
Wow.
Basically, they've sold a lot of their quote unquote the Seahawks players that we've all come to know.
3 first-round picks.
He's a franchise guy and he's still young and he's in his prime. But think about their offense. Other than Doug Baldwin, think about it. No more Jimmy Graham.
They've got nothing.
They've got nothing. It's Doug Baldwin and Russell Wilson. And look, Doug Baldwin is still not looked at from a talent perspective as a top-tier wide receiver. Now, he is paid like one, but
right.
I just wanted to throw that out there because I thought that was interesting. I actually have Doug Baldwin slotted in at number 13, too, just outside of my wide receiver 1 territory because of the upside. He does not, in my opinion, have the upside of a top 5 wide receiver, but consistently he is finishing in that low tier 1.
He has those big games, man.
Yeah, and he'll toss those in there for you, so that's why I have him slotted in at number 13.
Always hate playing Doug Baldwin in fantasy football. You just never know.
You never know when he's going to burn you.
So number 14, I have Adam Thielen, which we've already discussed. Matt, your number 14 is Tyreek Hill, which we've discussed. Number 15 for me, T.Y., who we've discussed. And then your number 15 is my number 16. You have Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah, I like Alshon Jeffrey this year. He's another guy that's proven to put up good fantasy stats. He did it with Jay Cutler in Chicago. And when he's featured, he's even better. And it's an offense that he's going to be featured. They did lose Torrey Smith. And other than him, there's not a whole lot of of big name guys there. So I think he's going to get his fair share of targets this year. And I believe in Carson Wentz. I think he's going to come back healthy, and I think that they're going to pepper him with targets, and he's going to be targeted in the end zone once again.
I totally agree. He's just he looked good last year. I mean, he's just reliable, consistent. That old reliable for Carson Wentz. So that's my number 16. Number 16 for you, Matt. Stefon Diggs. So you've got 2 receivers in the top 16 from the Vikings.
Well, I told you in the very first podcast how I believe in Kirk Cousins as a top 5 quarterback this year.
There you
I
go.
have to follow that up with ranking the top 2 guys there in the top 20, or even in this case in the top 16. You've got Stefon Diggs down at 23, 7 spots different for me, which is quite a bit different. The only thing with Diggs this year on the negative side is it's going to be hard, in my opinion, for him to repeat the 8 touchdowns that he had last year. But again, they seem to always look for him, which is the opposite of what you would think, since Adam Thielen is more of the size guy. Stefon Diggs is your 5'10", 6-foot guy.
Yep.
But they seem to find him down there in the end zone. So that's why I did have him a little bit higher. Maybe I surprised myself with that ranking, but the guy's super talented, and I love that offense this year.
I buy into everything you're saying, man. The only thing that makes me a little bit nervous is, I do think that Kirk Cousins distributes the ball pretty evenly. I don't think that Kirk Cousins really hones in on one guy. I think that's kind of what makes him successful. Is he distributes the ball really, really well. It's just his vision. He goes through his progressions really quickly. So I don't know. There's a lot up in the air for me as far as Stefon Diggs and Adam Thielen go. I think either one of them could be a wide receiver 1 this year. I'm just not sure which one, so I'm kind of staying away from both of them, I guess.
Staying away?
Away? All right, Matt. So I guess you explained yourself on Stefon Diggs. So number 17 for me is Amari Cooper, which we've discussed. Number 17 for you, Demaryius Thomas. Finally, with a quarterback, or is it?
I think it's an upgrade. It's not sexy. Case Keenum is not going to be a QB1 for me this year, but he is an upgrade over the likes of Trevor Siemian and Paxton Lynch and these garbage quarterbacks that John Elway has continued to put on the field since Peyton Manning left. I think Demaryius Thomas is too good. I do not see him. Some people see him as on the downside of his career. I don't see it that way. The guy is still an athletic freak. I think he runs great routes. I think he runs great routes underneath and over the top. He's proven that he can also be a big play guy, but watching the games last year, when you watch Denver play, they did not utilize him down the field at all, and I think that's because of the limitation of Trevor Siemian. He's not a downfield guy, and I do think Case Keenum proved last year that he can push the ball downfield.
I totally agree. So, I only have him 3 spots behind you. I have him at 20.
2 years ago, we're drafting Demaryius Thomas as a top 5, top 6 type wide receiver.
Yeah, no, Demaryius Thomas is talented, no doubt. He's another 30-year-old receiver. So I get what people are saying, that he's on the back end of his career. I agree with that, but what better way to revitalize it this year than with a good quarterback, or at least a quarterback who can get the ball to you and hit you in the hands. So my number 18 guy, speaking of hands, is Larry Fitzgerald, one of these old wide receivers.
Dave, where do you think he ranked in targets last year?
Ooh, in targets last year? I would say number 6.
Number 3.
Wow.
Only behind the top 2 guys, DeAndre Hopkins and Antonio Brown. Number 3 in targets last year.
So, and how many did he convert?
The guy just keeps putting up
100.
stats.
So he was number 2 in receptions last year.
The guy just continues to put up stats over and over and over again. And do you think this year that this is considered an upgrade at quarterback? We've talked about Sam Bones
absolutely.
Bradford, but it is an upgrade at quarterback for him.
Absolutely. I don't think Sam Bradford's gets enough respect, to be honest with you. Or maybe he gets too much for me. I don't know.
Yeah, and I have him. I mean, I have him 5 spots back at 23. Again, for me, it's upside. His upside is a little more limited than some of these other guys.
He's not sexy anymore.
But man, I mean, number 3 in targets. I mean, that's wide receiver 1 all day long.
That's amazing. I mean, he's 34 years old. Just guy takes care of his body.
It is amazing.
So number 18 for you, Matt, is
Allen Robinson. We already touched
Allen
on him.
Robinson.
And we're going to continue to touch on him because he's the big Dave guy this year. Allen Robinson.
Right. Allen
18.
Robinson. Number 19 for me is Josh Gordon. So it's interesting that I have him here, especially with Jarvis Landry coming to town. I think Josh Gordon he's one of those insanely talented receivers. It's all going to depend on the quarterback when they come in. If it's Tyrod Taylor, I'm probably going to drop him down a few spots. But if they bring in one of these rookie guys and they start off the year, I think Josh Gordon is going to be one of those guys who just separates himself as an elite talent on the offense, who will be, it'll be great for him to have Jarvis Landry on the other side as a number 2. You're just not going to be able to double team Josh Gordon.
So I have him outside my top 20, just outside, so a couple spots behind you. And I totally get why you're putting him in your top 20. It's because of the upside.
Yep.
And I agree with the Tyrod Taylor thing. Tyrod Taylor has never been able to feature a wide receiver with him throwing. So I think that's going to be a big factor here. But it is the Browns. We've seen him put up huge numbers, but we just don't know. There's such a question mark. But I give Josh Gordon a ranking just outside the top 20 just because he's the physical specimen of Josh Gordon, and you never know what he can do.
So number 19 for you, Matt, we've already touched on, is Brandon Cooks. Number 20, I have Demaryius Thomas, which we have touched on. And 20 for you, Matt, is a guy who's just slid down the rankings from where he's been drafted the last couple of years. Dez Bryant.
I mean, and Dez still may be cut. We don't know. I think the Cowboys, I think they're stupid for cutting him because
he's an amazing talent. He's
a great talent, and if they cut him so they don't have to pay him the $12 million, someone else is going to pay him somewhere close to the $12 million. He's proven to be a go-to wide receiver. Again, I just think Jason Garrett doesn't feature him the right way. That offense has looked a little bit weird, and I don't know if he's truly connected with Dak, but
I think that's a big piece of it.
But he's Dez Bryant. We've seen what he can do. He can
throw the ball up to him.
If the guy plays 16 games, he's going to score 10 touchdowns.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
He had 6 touchdowns this past year, 838 receiving yards.
That sounds putrid based on what I know of Dez, but I don't know.
And and maybe that's because of what we said with Dak Prescott. They're just not on the same page. I've got Dez Bryant 2 spots behind you at 22, but I hate to say it, but if he gets cut, maybe that's the best thing for Dez Bryant's value, going to another team. So that's going to wrap it up for the wide receiver rankings. So, Matt, who were the biggest, disparages between us as far as the differences go on players and
so number 1 is Allen Robinson. Dave has him at 10. I have him at 18. The second biggest was Brandon Cooks. We have a differential of 7 spots. Dave has him at 12, and I have him at 19. And then the next one was Stephon Diggs. I have him ranked at number 16. Dave has him ranked at number 23, so 7 spots different. Those were the 3 big names as far as the biggest separation from our rankings that we do. Obviously, separate from each other, and then bring them to you guys for comparison.
So that's going to wrap up our wide receiver rankings. Next week, we're going to get into quarterback and tight end. We're going to do them together. It'll just be a quicker rundown. Tight ends aren't really sexy. Quarterbacks, we can kind of breeze through them. So not as in-depth. The skill positions are what we live and die by in fantasy. Matt, we got to end on a little bit of a dad topic. I know you've been boasting about a pretty cool new toy that you got at the house. You know, we aren't quite into the formula yet, but what's your toy you guys have been playing with here lately?
It's funny that you ask because, I started the show by telling you it's been pretty trying in my household. It's been pretty stressful. I've been working a lot. My wife's super pregnant. The 10-month-old's fussy. So it's just funny what can bring you out of that funk. So the toy that Dave is speaking of is called the Baby Breeza. So what this product is, and again, I feel like not enough people know about this thing. It's basically the Keurig for your baby. So we do have a formula-fed baby. She came off the breastfeeding pretty early in her life. It just is something that worked out better for us. And, it's funny because last episode, Dave and I are sitting down here and we're recording, and you guys may have heard a little alarm go off in the background. Well, I'll tell you that alarm was my bottle-making alarm that is set for 8 p.m. every evening. And that is my alarm to no matter what I'm doing, I've got to get up, I've got to go into the kitchen, and I've got to make Annabelle's bottles for the next day that we send to the babysitter. And I hate it. There's a reason that I'm doing it. It's a little bit of me paying back my wife for all that she does, from carrying the children to feeding the children and to doing a lot of the other running.
Wives do a lot, man.
One of my things is making the bottles. So my 8 p.m. goes off. I go in, I make the bottles, I get formula on the counter, my hands are sticky.
Now you go into your local Starbucks in your kitchen.
Yeah, so now it's different. So now, all I got to do, I literally hit one button on my Baby Breeza. The formula powder is already in there. The water's already in there. It's already heated up. I literally put the bottle under the spigot. I hit one button, makes a couple noises. Next thing I know, I've got a fully good 6-ounce bottle ready to go for Annabelle.
Hot brewed milk.
It's exactly what it is. But I don't know if you could sense my excitement for this product and my voice. This is just something I don't understand why, if you have a child that is on formula, you have to have the Baby Breeza.
He's not getting paid to say this, by the way.
I should maybe, because I'm telling you what. And I will say, only $170, I think. It's the best $170 I've ever spent.
How about that?
And maybe, because of this, maybe the formula tastes better. Because Annabelle also, for the first time this week, she said mama.
Wow. I mean, dude, that's a big milestone.
She's been saying dada for about 3 or 4 weeks, and my wife didn't like that. I think she wanted a mama first, but
I've been pushing the dada.
I will also tell you that the night that the mama came out of the baby's mouth, it was also a better night for me because my wife came out of her shell. She's been struggling. She, again, super pregnant, ready to just get this other child out of her. And she heard the mama came out. She's laying on my shoulder, cooking a nice dinner, or watching a comedy movie. It's the way it was supposed to be. So
a little happiness in the Cherry household.
Exactly.
I mean, the only thing that we've had go on this past week is we introduced a binky. So Bailey's 7 weeks old. She's not had a binky whatsoever. It's been 100% breastfeeding. And then we just kind of gave in. She just, it's not teething, but they just doing that sucking thing, and it's just like, so as a guy, I mean, obviously I can't just make milk, and it's kind of
you can't just pull the teat.
Yeah, and we've done, she's done some pumping, so we've done a couple bottles, but it's just like, man, I swear that baby she just eats all day.
Well, as you know, Dave, I had an extremely fussy, colicky little baby when Annabelle was really little, and I was always frustrated because she wouldn't stop crying. And my thing was, I always thought that every baby wanted a binky. We call it a passy, you call it a binky. So the day that Annabelle actually started to take the passy was a game changer. So I am hoping that little Bailey will just happily take the binky and just close those eyes and go off to sleep. Because when they want the binky or the passy in my world, much easier on everyone.
So she knows the difference between the fake nipple, whether it's the binky or it's the bottle.
But you're supposed to get the binky or the passy that matches the nipple these days. You guys have that?
Maybe we should have went to Bye Bye Baby and done a comparison right there in the aisle.
Yeah, you can get one that's supposed to mimic the size of the real thing.
Maybe there's a market for that where we can just invent something where it's like a legit mold. I don't know. So yeah, I mean that's the only thing that's been going on in my house. Other than we put a bark collar on the dog. That's been awesome. Never done a bark collar. I never thought he would listen. I've got like a little 9-pound Dachshund Yorkie mix. Barks at everything, as Matt knows.
She's been sitting here with us for the entire podcast, and she's not barked once. So it sounds like
you guys
it's
haven't
working.
heard anything.
Yeah.
But it'll literally just beep, and it'll just like she'll hear it and she'll stop. So I mean that's the other game changer in the Campbell household this week. But that's going to wrap it up.
It's the little things, Dave.
Oh, I mean but it's little things that just add up to quality of life. So that's going to wrap up this week's episode. Catch us next week for the quarterback and tight end rankings. And then, the draft is 2 weeks away. So let's get ready for that. So hopefully you guys are subscribing to us on iTunes. Leave us a 5-star review. You can follow us on Facebook, and that is facebook.com/draftdads. So get in touch with us on there. Also on Twitter, we are at DraftDadDave. So give us a tweet on there. Ask us questions. Ask us fantasy questions. Just say, hey, ask us dad questions. I mean, we'd be happy to answer anything or try to get you guys on the podcast.
I would love dad questions, so keep them coming.
Dude, dad questions are great. That's what we do this for. So we're both new dads, and we're learning with you guys, so to speak. So, Matt, good podcasting with you, man.
Thank
Catch
you.
you next week.
You too.
All right, guys. Enjoy.